Welcome to Cultimatum, the culture of cults, a podcast dedicated to supporting survivors of cults and human trafficking. This show is hosted by myself, Anonymous Andrew.
And my name is Melody. I'm going to be Andrew's co-host. I'm also a cult survivor myself from a cult called the House of Yahweh. I am a cult advocate and creator and administrator of a cult support group on Facebook called Cult Escape and Recovery. For guests on our show, we do want them to understand that we respect privacy concerns. You can always remain anonymous or use a fake name.
And Melody, this is a safe haven for those who have been in a cult, survived, and escaped, and are now on a journey of recovery, trying to put their life back together. So join us as we learn together about the culture of cults.
And Andrew, we also want to add a trigger warning that some episodes may contain explicit subjects including sex abuse, rape, human trafficking, suicide, and other potentially disturbing topics.
Greetings and welcome to Cultimatum, the culture of cults. And my name is Anonymous Andrew, and my co-host Melody. Hello.
Hi, Andrew. How are you?
I'm doing great. So what do we have on the plate today?
Excellent. This interview, and I actually was not here for this interview. I'm just going to preface that. Andrew did this interview on his own while I was out of state at a wedding. But I have listened to the episode, and she's got a very unique story. It's a smaller group, which, that can be a cult too. And it's again, a non-religious cult. It was, I think, a meditation group or something I think she was in.
Yeah, it was the man, again, I don't want to give too much away, but he was 57, right. She was 20, and he had some philosophical weird thoughts, and actually she wants to come back and do a part 2 because she said that in this interview she didn't get a chance to really talk about what he believed in. You'll hear her trauma and how she got out and all that, but we didn't really get into what this man who she followed and married, yes, what he stood for and believed in, and she does want to talk about that. No, it more just
kind of goes into showing how he was very manipulative, controlling, con artist, narcissistic. It kind of shows who he was as a person, but it did not go into really what his beliefs were very much.
Right. So there will be a part 2 to this, yet to be, and Melody will be with us on that one. So,
but still,
all right, let's get to the episode.
So yeah, let's get to it.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Cultimatum, the culture of cults. And today we have a special guest. Her name is Ari Sherwood. Hello, Ari, and welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Ari contacted us, Cultimatum, from Facebook, and she says she has a very interesting story about a cult. So, Ari, I'm going to hand it off to you and let you tell the story.
All right, thank you very much. Well, this group has never been talked about publicly, which I think at this point in my life, having figured out what I've figured out, I think it's a pretty good idea to start putting it out there, because I know there are so many others who have been a part of this group and been influenced by this individual who really need to hear the story and start to really think about things. So I was 19 years old. I had just become a massage therapist. I was looking for a job, and I stumbled upon this holistic health center in my town. And so I walked in there, and there was this man sitting there. He was very mysterious, very interesting. He had this really nice, deep voice, and he was very friendly. Instantly, I was drawn in. And we sat, and we probably talked for like an hour. And I had found out that he was teaching these energy medicine classes, which at the time I was really interested in because, well, I guess massage school, and also I was sort of on the search for my own spirituality. So he said this was a unique energy medicine that he had developed on his own. Well, he had died in 1999 was his story. So he had died and had like these visions. And he said that God gave him this vision of this energy therapy that he had to share with the world. And so that's what he was doing. It was called Flowing Hands Energy Therapy. And so instantly I was like captivated. I was like, okay, this sounds good. This sounds like something I'm really interested in. And so I also had found out that he was a psychic. He had a very, very interesting story. He had claimed to have done psychic readings for Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton. He had many, many claims, totally unverified. But a lot of people were captivated by him. He was very, very good at captivating people and really drawing you in.
Hang on, let me jump in there. To this day, have you been able to verify if he did any?
No.
No. And nor do you believe him?
Not
Or
anymore.
you don't? Not anymore. Okay. Go ahead.
I know
I'm sorry.
that he had contact with Ronald Reagan for different reasons, which is verified. I have like newspaper articles, but I think that he kind of took that and manipulated it.
Twisted, yeah. Okay.
Right. So, yeah, I was hooked. And so I started going to his classes every week. And as you know, at first it's like I'm going to be a massage therapist, but I didn't do any massages. I was just going to these classes and like learning what he called shamanism, his style of shamanism. And, over time, at first it was really fun. Like we would do these fun, like psychic workshops where you get with a partner and what did they have for breakfast, or you flip a coin, heads or tails, and it was fun. Over time, it got more serious. And he started, there was one class in particular where he got very serious and sat us all down and was like, Doomsday is coming. I've been having vision.
How many, you said sat us down. How many is us?
Man, there was like 20 people.
Okay.
Yeah, so we were all pretty tight-knit at the time. So yeah, he sat us down and told us his doomsday vision that he said he had been having since he was a child. And it was December 21st, 2012, if you remember that time. That was a big conspiracy at the time because of the Mayan calendar. And so he really played on this idea that the world would end on this date. And he started really instilling this fear. And at the time, I was absolutely terrified. I looked at him as, this divine person. And he became my authority in life. Like, I came to him for every single thing. And so he ended up, encouraging me to move in with another student. And at the time, I was like, yeah, for sure. I want to get out of my parents' house. I want to go and, live my life. So I ended up moving in with another student. I had no idea that he would be moving in with us, but he did. And then another student moved in. So it's like there's 4 of us living together in like this echo chamber, and which is a very common tactic of cult leaders. I mean, you see that all the time where they're living in communities and things like that. So he was really pushing this agenda to get us all to move to Tennessee because he said that that's where we would be safe, that where we are at in Michigan, we would be underwater. So he wanted us to go to the mountains. He had a whole plan. At the time, I didn't think I could go. And, I was terrified that I was going to die, right? I was scared.
Sure.
And, it's this it was like a long-term groom. It was probably almost 2-year grooming process, being under his influence. And so I was living with him, and eventually I did move out, but I was still very much involved. So one night, he had me come over, and he told me that we were essentially soulmates. Well, we weren't soulmate. He had a different system of the soulmate thing. So he had different levels. Soulmate was in the middle. He had twin flame, soulmate, and he called us a oneness. And he said we were literally one at one point, and we were separated.
But not romantically. But
nope. Yes, romantically.
Oh, romantically. Okay.
Right. He said that he told me that we were together in every lifetime, and that if I wasn't with him in this lifetime, that nothing would ever work out for me. He had told me also that he couldn't live without me, and if I didn't agree to marry him, that he would drink bleach and kill himself. So at this time, I was 20 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was a really weird moment because there was no romance or anything between us.
How old was he at the time?
57.
So you're 20 and he's 57. Okay.
Yeah. And in this moment, I feel this incredible pressure of like, okay, if I don't do this, nothing's going to work out. And, you know, I believed that he had this direct connection to God, right? Like that he could hear God in his mind and that he had this authority. So I was like, if I went against him, I went against God, I went against my purpose and my path and everything. So in this moment, he's like, so will you marry me? And I was like, yeah, okay, you know?
Okay.
So within like a week of this, we ended up packing our bags, and probably about half the group moved to Tennessee. The rest of them were very turned off by this union between us. They saw right away, like, there's something wrong here. You guys, like, when did this start, right?
Yeah.
Like, and she's so young. Like, it didn't make any sense. So I think about, like, a good half of the group left because of that moment, and which makes a lot of sense.
Now it does.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yep, I moved to Tennessee with him, and then it got more, it just got more intense. You know, so he was blind. He was a blind man, and I did have to take care of him.
Oh, he was blind.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I ended up having to take care of him. I was like being trained to take care of him and to, be his servant. I've received a lot of criticism from everyone else who was living with us. They were very critical of me, and anything I did wrong went straight to him. Anything at all, if I was dressed a certain way, or if I wasn't keeping up on the house, or anything like that, it went straight to him. And then he would sit me down and tell me what the other students were telling him about me, and like I had to be like this perfect wife. So it was a lot of pressure, and I took that job on. So and I was doing everything. I set up our websites. We were doing some radio shows at the time. So I was doing all the technical stuff for the radio shows.
Quick question. This sounds like it would cost money. Like, so who was he working? Were you working? Where was funding coming from?
Well, I was not allowed to work.
Okay.
I had to help him run the business. So I did everything because he's blind, right? So I was the one who did everything. The money came from the students. The money came from classes, psychic readings, and manipulation. He was definitely... I had seen students hand him thousands of dollars. Thousands of dollars. For nothing. He would call... If we were running low on money, he would call people and say, hey, do you want to invest in my business? And he had actually been sued for not keeping up on his end of things to an investor. And he never did. He just took money. He actually took money from my mom's husband as well. He was like, hey, invest in our business, and you're going to get this much back. And he just never, ever did that. He never, ever felt there.
Because there was money coming in, but he wasn't... I understand.
Right.
It's a scam.
He was a
con
artist. He was so good at what he did, and it is insane. Like, he made you think he had worked for the CIA, that he was in the government psychic program. Like,
wow.
He was a straight-up con artist. And it's crazy that the story has never been told to me, because he was a master manipulator. And, no one, people, if you couldn't question him. You really couldn't. You know, there was times where I'd question him in front of the other students, and he took me aside and was like, if
That's
you
a
have
no-no.
a problem, you do this in private. You don't ever question me in front of people. And, yeah, he was very manipulative. So, like, I wasn't allowed to work. He kept me up most of the time. I didn't sleep very much. He would just sit me up all night and talk, which is just constant grooming and brainwashing. He was just always telling me all of these things that I needed to know and my purpose. And, yeah, it was constant. So I was never sleeping. I was always awake, and I was running on like maybe a couple hours of sleep every day, running all these businesses, and it was tough. It was tough, and I felt the pressure of it at the time, but I just kept pushing through and kept doing what I was doing, and
Okay, I have two questions.
Okay.
The first one, I just have to ask out of curiosity. So did you get legally married?
Yes.
Okay, so you were legally his wife. Were you intimate with him? Did you have sex with him?
Oh, so that's a whole thing in itself. Yes, I did. And so what's interesting about that is because it was so sudden, right? Like all of a sudden I'm engaged to him, and I never looked at him in this way.
Right.
So when we went down to Tennessee, like the first week, I was like nervous. Like I wouldn't even sleep in the bed with him. He saw that, Terry. You know, he was like, you know, if you're not comfortable, you can have the bed to yourself. Or, you know, if I did sleep in the bed with him, like I did not want to sleep with him. And so one night he got sick of it and took me outside and sat me down and said, hey, I had this vision. If you don't sleep with me, like I am going to die. And it's very coercive. And
Manipulative.
I was like, oh my gosh, like you're gonna die if I don't sleep with you. And I was like, okay, like it's like this tremendous pressure.
When he said, if you don't sleep with me, is he talking about sleeping or
No.
sex?
He's like, if you don't have sex with me,
Okay.
like
Wow.
I am going to die.
Wow.
So I did, and, you know, sex was actually a big part of things. You know, he used it in different ways and made it seem like spiritual or things like that to push the boundaries sexually. So it was a very, very insane experience. I actually ended up having his child as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, you know, it was crazy. So he had just full control over every single aspect of my life, everything. Like, I did not make the decisions, and he was my number one authority. And he was authority over everyone, really. Like, he was telling people who their soulmates are, who need to be with, like, total twin flame universe vibes going on, just like, oh, that person's not the person for you, or, you know, things like that. So he controlled everybody that was within his reach and that listened to him.
And in the meantime, the whole Doomsday thing is still fascinating to me. In not just this cult, but all cults. So what
God.
was he doing to prepare? Doomsday preppers, they stockpile and they have bunkers. I mean, was he doing any of this?
Yeah, we were full preppers. We had Molly packs, we had iodine pills, we had, little straw water filters. We had, we were stocked up. We had bow and arrows, you name it. Like, we had all kinds of stuff stocked up. And we were always living on edge. We were always just, any day now, this is going to happen and this is going to go down. See, we thought that we were special. Like, that's what he convinced you. You know, he didn't, like, break you down and made you think you weren't special. He built you up and was like, you are going to be this great person who's going to help humanity begin again. And you are a leader. Like, you are one of those people who's going to show people the true way.
So he was preaching that doomsday was going to happen, the world was going to come to an end, but you were going to survive, and then once the apocalypse settled or whatever, you would rebuild the world. That was his envision? Okay, wow.
Yep. And then we were the leader. We were like the chosen ones. There wasn't many chosen ones, but we specifically were. So, and we fell for all of this, right? It was very intense, and you always thought, or every day was survival. Every day you are fighting for survival, and you have to be prepared. You have to be on the edge of your seat every single day. And I was, I wasn't allowed to leave without a man with me, which I didn't realize at first. It would always be like a subtle suggestion. I would be like, I'm going to go to the grocery store, and he'd say, oh, why don't you take so-and-so with you? Or why don't you take so-and-so? He would just suggest it.
What was he afraid of?
Well, this is what's interesting about that. So the day I realized that I wasn't allowed to leave alone was I had left alone while he was napping to go to Starbucks. And at Starbucks, or on my way to Starbucks, he calls me and he's freaking out. He's like, where are you? Why are you alone right now? Don't you know how dangerous the world is for you? You are a woman. You should not be leaving without a man. Like, he just straight up was telling me this. I was like shocked. I was like, wait, what? Like, I didn't know this was a problem. So I never did it again. And I always knew that I had to bring someone with me. He made it sound like it was to protect me, and I believed that, but I realized that it was actually because he didn't want me leaving.
Insecurity. He was insecure.
He thought I was going to run away.
Sure.
And
or you might find a more younger, attractive man that, obviously, I would imagine you never was attracted to him in any way.
Right.
Right, okay. Yeah, he was insecure. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, like he just was like, nope, this is not happening. So eventually me and a couple other students ended up enrolling in college, and he encouraged us to do that because he wanted the grant money. So, yeah. It was a way to get some money real quick. So in college, one of the other students, I found out years later she left the group right after the psychology class we had together. And so I remember one day I'm at school and he calls me and he told me I had to drop out. He's like, you can't finish this year. You have to drop out. You have to be home. You have a duty to your husband to be here and take care of me. And he was not alone. Like, he had people there with him, but he wanted me there.
He wanted you there, right.
Right, like, he was like, you have to drop out. But I found out that student had messaged my mom and had told my mom that he made me drop out because she left after being in school. So it like triggered that fear that I would leave or I would figure this out. So he didn't want me to be a critical thinker. He was very against critical thinking. He told us that was all ego. He said critical thinking is bad for you. He was against it completely.
Yeah, so you're not allowed to think for yourself. In cults, they don't. If you think for yourself, you might actually think your way out of this. So
yeah.
Yeah.
They know that. They're smart. And that's what people don't realize. These are smart people.
Yes.
Highly intelligent. I was so devastated to drop out of school. I actually really enjoyed it. So it was really hard.
You never... You started the story off as a massage therapist. You never got to indulge in that? Never worked? I
did later on.
Okay.
Yep, that ended up being like my main means of income after the fact, after everything. So, he had gotten really sick. We were in and out of the hospital, but even at the hospital, he would not let the nurses take care of him. He told them his wife would do everything. The nurses would come in and be like, it's time for, this or that. And he'd say, nope, my wife is here and she's going to do it and she'll take care of it. He made me literally do every single thing. even in the hospital. He would not let the nurses touch him. And it was a hard time because I felt like I was fighting for his survival. Like, I had to keep him alive. I had to always be there. I was never sleeping. I was just taking care of him constantly. And
I'm just curious, what kind of health issues are we talking about here?
Well, he had heart issues.
Okay.
And he had COPD. And it's really weird. Like, he was failing, but he had developed a staph infection in his arm, and that's what killed him. It was like antibiotic resistant. So we were in the hospital for a while, for like a week, and then he was on IV therapy at home, so antibiotics at home, and I was doing all of that stuff for him. I was basically his nurse, and it just wasn't working.
How did you guys, a little bit off topic, but just, it is health related. How did you eat? Was you cooked? He cooked?
Oh, I cooked for everybody.
Of course.
I was like mom in the house, so I cooked every day, really big meals, and we all ended up gaining weight.
So that's where I was going. So even though it was home cooking, was you didn't have a specific diet, or like, some cults, I know they're either vegetarians or you ate meat, you fried.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was hearty.
Yeah, okay.
It was like, eat, eat, eat. He hated how skinny I was.
Right.
And he would tell me that. I can feel your hip bones or things like that. He wanted me to gain weight, which is, a typical control tactic. I see that on both ends of the spectrum. Either you're gaining weight or you're dealing with anorexia, like in other groups. And that's something I feel like goes over people's heads with it, like how they control your body.
Yeah.
And like what you're eating. So he had me, I was gaining a bunch of weight. It was not a healthy diet at all. And so, he ended up passing away, and it was a really interesting experience because it was scary. I was there with him. I had been up all night with him, and then it's like all of a sudden it's like he went into congestive heart failure.
This was at the hospital?
No, it's at home.
Oh, at home.
Yeah. So he died at home with me and a couple other students there with him. And it was pretty traumatizing, to be honest. I'd never seen someone die before.
Yeah, no.
So it was a weird experience. But also, I felt like guilty because I felt this relief that I could sleep again, that I could, and I remember the first time I went to the grocery store by myself, I literally was liberated. And you never think you'd be so liberated just going grocery shopping. But no one was with me. It's just me and my baby. And I was like, wow. Like, the world, like, everything's fine.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the child, daughter, boy?
Not really. I kind of want to keep him, like, on his own.
Okay.
Out of the discussion. But, I mean, it is relevant, though, because, over the years since then, like, I've been a single mom, and I've been doing my thing and trying to figure my life out. So, like, him dying was a really good thing for all of us, even though it was hard to see that at the time. But it ended up really liberating me, and I became, like, very independent. I had to work. I started working again.
That's where the massage therapy kicked in.
Right. I ended up moving a few times cross the country, and I ended up back home in Michigan, where at first I was doing, like, different jobs, like cashier or something, but I ended up getting a massage job at a spa, and I was thriving doing massage.
Good.
It was awesome. It was really good for me, but I was still brainwashed. I didn't know. Like, I did not know for years. It was crazy. So, because I was still in that world.
So how long, just for a time frame, so you met him around 18, 19, I think you said?
Yeah, 19.
And he passed away when you were how old?
I was 23.
Okay.
Or wait, no, I was 22.
Okay.
Or wait, no. That's right. No, I was 23. Yep. I'm trying to remember the timeline here. Yep, I was 23. So, yeah, he passed away. So I had been in it about 4 years.
Okay.
And, yeah, so it took me 5 years after he died to even figure out that I was brainwashed. I did not know. I still had this mindset that I was a special person who's going to do all these great things. And so when you're in the massage world, I went and got my yoga teacher certification. And so you're still like being in an echo chamber. Like I was still around like these spiritual people who kind of like fed that delusion I had, or like, but I wasn't really talking about it too much. So I just kept it kind of in my head that I am on this mission in life, and I was going to open my own business. Which was going to be a similar idea of what he was doing. So
really,
yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, but everything shifted for me. I ended up getting this awful medical injury in my hands. I have a genetic mutation that causes like severe brachial plexus neuropathy. So my hands and wrists went paralyzed for a year and a half.
Wow.
And yeah, so in this paralysis, I was devastated because I was like, I don't understand. Like I'm this yogi, I'm a massage therapist. I need my hands to work.
You need your hands.
And it was taken away from me, right? I was gone. So I had to figure my life out from that point forward. And that's when I enrolled in college.
Okay.
And it was the best thing I ever did. Because so initially when I started going to school, I was going for psychology. But then I sat down in this intro to philosophy class, and it reminded me a lot of what he was teaching, except it was giving me all these other perspectives, and I really realized, whoa, this is not original. These philosophers have been talking about these things for
thousands of years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was shocking, and I was like, wait a minute. And I was so good at it, right? It was like I didn't know that I was an academic. I had no real idea like what my strengths were because I never explored it. So when I'm sitting in these philosophy classes, I decided to pick up this major. It just resonated with me, and yeah, it was the best thing I ever did because I was able to finally be a critical thinker. I was able to define like what is authority to me.
And that was probably what he was afraid of when he asked you to drop out or told you to drop out, because if you go to college, and I remember taking philosophy, you have to be a critical thinker. And he was afraid that you would, okay.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that is what ended up happening. It was like within 1 year of going to college, and I was like, oh my God, I have been brainwashed.
Yep.
And it and it's like, because in philosophy, it breaks you down to your core, right? Like you are like everything you believe all of a sudden crashes down because you are questioning the very nature of everything. And you're hearing everyone else's perspectives, very smart people too.
Yeah, sure.
And it really makes you think about things, and it really makes you reflect on your own beliefs. And, in a way, it like kind of pushed me into this almost nihilism at the time, because I was like, oh my gosh, like if something I was so sure about, I could be so wrong about. Like how do I know?
Let me ask you, the things that he taught you or his thinking, it wasn't so much religious, it was more philosophical.
Mm-hmm.
So
well, it's both.
Oh, okay. So
he still taught us about demons and Satan. It was like some Christianity vibes mixed with like spirituality, shamanism. Like he like had this whole mix of
he made up his own religion, basically.
He did.
Okay.
So like Satan was our enemy, right? Like we were doing exorcisms and
really
things like that. Yeah.
Oh God.
So it's a very deep story. It's like impossible to get through. There's so many things. But learning those critical thinking skills and the self-reflection and kind of getting through my nihilism and realizing, well, not only that, but realizing that I didn't know what I stood for. When you're in those classes and it's like, what's your take on this topic? And you're like, I don't know. Like, I don't know right now. Like, I had to learn and eventually started forming my own opinions on these important topics. And I started realizing that the way I looked at the world was actually almost opposite of the way that he looked at the world.
Yeah.
And what I valued the most was autonomy. That is what I value. Especially after going through that. My philosophy of authority class was life-changing because that's what it all was about. It was about authority and like who has authority over you and why. Like, how do you define this concept? And I had to define it myself. What do I think this is? And, I learned so much. So much. It was absolutely life-changing. One of the best things I ever did. I feel like, cult survivors can really benefit from learning philosophy.
Well, and this is what we've been discovering in interviewing cult survivors and ex-members, is that these cults, especially if they get their claws into you in your early years, like your teenage years, that's when we as society start teaching our children. And if you're taken out of that concept and taught to think at the age of 16, 17, 18, that this is, and of course, when you get out of it 10 years later and go to college and learn, just the other day we interviewed somebody and she had never seen a movie at the age of 30. They weren't allowed to watch movies, so there's so much that you were probably exposed to after you got out that he kept you from, right?
Yeah.
That was...
Yeah.
Wow.
They suppress...
Yeah.
They suppress your personality, your identity, your strengths are suppressed. You don't know what you're good at because you can never explore those things.
So, Ari, you are obviously out, and this cult there's no remnants left over. Everybody disbanded. They're all gone, or there's some people that are still in Tennessee.
There's, it's confusing. I'm sure there's lots of people who there are people who still believe in this. There are.
Is there a new leader?
Nope.
No,
I think
okay.
everyone did go their own ways.
Okay.
But everyone's on their own thing. And I haven't really kept contact with many of them. There's a few who but it's... yes, there's many people who are still brainwashed. I think he traveled, so for years before I met him, so God knows who is out there under this influence. I had some friends who had joined the group who would call me like later on and be like, because he had this idea, so he said he didn't believe in hell, but he believed you would get thrown into the sun, which is essentially like the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So
hell, hot.
yeah. So I remember having one of my friends call me and saying, "Am I going to get thrown into the sun if I do this?" And I had to have this conversation, of nope. I was like, he lied to us. None of this is real.
Yeah.
And I had that conversation with a few of them. Of you're not, the reason your relationships don't work out is not because you rejected your soulmate. I promise you that. Yeah. It is not. But that's what, those beliefs become core beliefs.
Sure.
They're ingrained in you. Which is why I'm doing these projects I'm doing now, which is why I did start, I'm starting Intrinsic Agency, which is going to be an educational resource center. Because I want to teach these things of finding your own truths and your own identity and really understanding what self-agency is. Because for years, you might not even realize, I recently realized my decorations on my walls were were decorations that I had for 10 years from that time. They weren't anything I chose. They weren't even mine, right? They were his. And I still have them all on my walls, even though I'm well out of it. It's like I never even questioned it. And like not realizing I haven't had the agency to decorate my house myself or to choose how it's going to look, right? I'm just default. And it's like a conscious effort that I have to put into like reprogramming my brain into being this individual.
So you are starting intrinsic agency, which is it going to you're going to focus on helping other cult survivors, or is there other?
That's my main objective.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to agency and autonomy. Like, I think leaving a cult, what do you want to wear? Like, making those basic decisions is so hard, and you don't realize it. Once you become conscious of it, you're like, wow, wait a minute. Like, what do I want to look like today? Or, like, what do I want my house to look like?
Free thinking, yeah. It's
right.
Something that's foreign concept to you.
Yeah, and it's a process to get to that point because it's, like, automatic. You're automatically defaulting into these thoughts that you were programmed to think, and you're not taking this conscious approach to it of really reflecting, like, what do I want? Or what do I believe in? And so that's what I would like to do with Intrinsic Agency. It's still pre-launch, but it's all a process that I've been building up for a minute now, and I think it's a great thing, and like, I do hope it helps people.
You told me off mic that you are also looking into a podcast. So
yes.
So that'll be... So once the agency's launched, the podcast will be the companion to the...
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So it's Disillusion Podcast, and it's going to cover a lot of those same concepts, and really get and dig into the psychological dynamic. And it's not limited to cults, though. Because I've noticed this is something that is very common and universal. It's a phenomenon that you see in relationships, you see with like people's parents, or in work environments, you see it in with pimps and prostitutes. You see this dynamic, and it's all over the place, and people don't realize that this isn't just like a cult phenomenon. This is something that is much larger than that is so much more common. Many friends of mine who have left abusive relationships are dealing with the same kind of things that I was dealing with after the cult.
Right.
Of like, how am I going to decorate, or things like that,
And I'm gonna use the term that I've used in my other podcast, gaslighting. There's a lot of gaslighting involved in basic deception tactics. And you were talking about relationships, or prostitutes, or teachers, or even marriages. There's the gaslighting component to it. So
yes, and then you end up like gaslighting yourself as well.
Absolutely, sure.
Because you're so used to it. Like, I convinced myself I was crazy, and then I realized, wait, I'm not. I'm literally not crazy. Like, I'm just dealing with some serious stuff. I'm having, and you gaslight yourself as well. You learn that behavior.
Okay. So how are you doing today? I'm just curious, have you found a new man in your life? Have you moved on? Are you remarried?
I'm a single woman.
Okay.
And I enjoy that. But yes, I've definitely moved on and had relationships and all those things. So yeah, today I'm doing pretty good. I ended up graduating school, and I'm kind of in this transition now of, going in or applying for graduate school and pursuing a higher degree. So that's pretty much been my prerogative. And
what would you like to pursue?
That's been a tough one. Eventually, I would like to get my PhD. However, right now I feel it's quite difficult being in my in my single mom life.
Yeah.
So I might have to wait a little bit for that. But I think I will be pursuing a master's in counseling psychology.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So then I can apply, what I've learned to really help people.
Yeah,
So.
I think you'll be very good at that. That's good. I hope you do follow that.
Thank you.
Okay. Geez, anything else you want to tell us before we wrap it up? I'm just fascinated by all of this.
Right. There's a lot of groups out there who people just don't even know about. Don't even realize.
Which is kind of why we started this podcast. I was, when I was told about the Twin Flames universe 4 or 5 months ago, my head was so buried deep in the other podcast and the relationship thing that I wasn't paying attention. It's when I watched the documentary on TFU and then joined a couple of the groups on Facebook about cults. I was shocked at how many cults there are out there, and now you come along with like this unknown Tennessee cult that, although like you said, this man before you met him had traveled, so he was probably practicing these gaslighting and manipulative thinking. You met him at 57. What was he doing for the previous 40 years,
Oh gosh, yeah,
Yeah.
I couldn't even imagine. I couldn't imagine all of it. He did have an interesting. I know we're running out of time, but I do want to say this.
Sure, go ahead.
I mean, he had a lot of wives.
I was
like,
just going to
over
ask you,
time.
do you think there's any other children of his out there?
Absolutely. Well, I know like 7 of them.
Wow.
But who knows how many there? Like
Yeah.
honestly, I don't know. Like I know he would get married, and then leave, and then he would get married again like 6 months later, and then have some kids,
Yeah.
and then he had a consistent pattern. It's really fascinating.
So when you met him and married him, none of his children were with him. They were with the mothers.
They were, he had abandoned all of them,
Yeah.
every one of them, like when they were kids, right? Which was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Like these
Wow.
kids are like older than me.
Yeah, I was just gonna,
Yeah.
oh God.
Like and so yeah, it's such an he's interesting, very very interesting person. But he had these patterns.
You should write a book. I think would be
I plan on it.
okay, good.
I love to write, and it's definitely a big.
I think it'd be an interesting read.
Yeah.
I'd be curious just to know some of his thinking. It just amazes me. Like you said, he was a very smart, very intellectual, intelligent person, but yet there is a narcissistic or there's a personality disorder underneath all that. And it just fascinates me that these people who are very, very, very like intelligent and yet they're devious, and they're disturbed deep down inside. So, okay.
Yeah, I think you have to be pretty smart to start your own religion.
And get people to follow you and do everything that he wants you to do.
Right.
Wow. Ari, thank you so much for just a fascinating story.
Yeah.
I'm always speechless after because I just go about my day and I never think about things like this. But the more that I'm doing this, it's more importantly, I have to give kudos to you and all the survivors who managed to get out and learn to think on your own and what's the word to unbrainwash yourself?
Like deprogram.
Deprogram. Thank you. That's what I was looking for. So it's a lot. It's a lot of. You went through a lot of trauma, and to deprogram on it's not an easy task. And so I give you a lot of kudos for doing that.
Well, I appreciate it.
And I hope your agency does well. And let us know when your podcast goes live. We can put it in the group and we'll share it with everybody. And I wish you the best of luck with all that.
I truly appreciate it. Right now I am on Instagram. It's called Intrinsic Agency.
Okay.
So if anyone wants to follow my journey, it's been one hell of a journey to get to this point.
Okay. So that's Instagram, but you have anything else? Facebook or?
Well, yeah, I'm Disillusioned 8 on TikTok, which I have not been, I'm just starting all of these. And I'm also on YouTube, Disillusioned. And as I get everything else set up for the podcast, I'll definitely shoot all that stuff away.
But I'll put in the show notes the Instagram, the TikTok, and the YouTube.
Yeah, I'm currently working on my website, but I've been a very busy woman, so I'm just like kind of trying to get it all in order. And
you're going to be more busy.
Yeah, I'm pre-launch phase right now, but this is one of the steps forward is putting myself out there and starting to really talk about it.
Good. Well, we'll do our best to get your story out there. And thank you for coming on and sharing it. It was very courageous of you, and I'm glad you're doing better today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
That was an excellent interview with Ari and Andrew. I think Andrew did an excellent job. And I'm going to say that actually, Andrew and I just talked about this, not recording, but I want to say that this is what I like about this. It shows that it's not about the size of the group. It is about the amount of control that the leader has over the followers or the members. And I personally believe, this is what Andrew and I just talked about, that a person can be in a controlling, abusive relationship, and essentially they can kind of be in a cult of one, where if the other person is controlling their mind and gaslighting them and doing all these things, it's very cult-like. And there are a lot of similarities there. So it's really not about the size.
And I never really. So you have mentioned that, and I think I heard it somewhere else. And being in a relationship like the one that I was in, that my other podcast is about, I never thought about it. But a lot of the symptoms and the trauma that you go through are very similar, because there is control, there is gaslighting, there is deception, there is sometimes money. They're after your money, and of course I never compare what somebody went through in a cult, but there's a lot of similar. So
and it's a way that somebody might be able to relate to that without having actually been through it, to be like, oh yeah, I was in this relationship and this person really controlled, where I went and who I talked to and what I did. And that's kind of like being in a cult. It's just on a smaller level.
And like Ari talked about, she couldn't go anywhere without him. Not without him. He would make sure a man went with her.
Without an escort, yes.
Yeah, and I think there was only one time she was able to get away, and even then he called her and then he sent somebody to get. I think that's what she said. It's just amazing that what the control that
absolutely
they insert,
and she really didn't gain her freedom until he was gone, until he died, and even still then she talked about how she still did not at that point realize she was brainwashed. It took and I don't know what the amount of time was. She doesn't really say, but it took an amount of time for her to actually be able to be retrospective and use the critical thinking to look back and be like, oh my gosh, that he did all of these things really deliberately and I was brainwashed.
Yep.
And then she had that aha moment where she was just like, wow, she didn't even realize it, even after he was gone.
And I like the fact that she is starting a podcast.
Yes.
This morning, you and I know this, but the audience doesn't, that she posted a TikTok video and she mentions us as being the first interview that she's done. And I think I did the recording, but listening to her, she still has a lot of trauma to work through, a lot.
Yes.
And I think the podcast is going to help her. That's where I'm trying to take this.
Absolutely.
Like my podcast helped me when I left that relationship. It helped me understand what I went through, and by interviewing guests and talking about it for months, Ari is going to get, I think, a little bit of self-therapy, self-help by airing all of this out. She's got a lot to talk about. And again, she's coming back for a part 2.
Yes, and I will say the main difference between the cult and the abusive relationship is that you can get out of a cult or a group like that, and you can totally avoid any group for the rest of your life. It's kind of hard to avoid not interacting or looking for a partner. That's something you got to keep going back into. So you've got to really learn to look for the red flags and learn how to navigate that and say, when I do this next time, these are the mistakes I don't want to make. Whereas with a cult, you can kind of just be like, I'm going to avoid, because that's what I've done. I pretty much avoided all organized religions. That's my cult experience. I'm just like, yeah,
me too.
I think I'm just going to stay away from that. That's just not for me. But it's hard to do that. It's a lot harder to do that after a bad relationship.
Yeah. And as I said, I've left the Catholic Church for many, many years. And while I am in a 12-step fellowship, and I know some people think that's a cult, yes. It's a spiritual thing, and I have a higher power. But I do not belong or believe in any organized religions. But do not get me started on that, because I will go off on a weekend rant. So
there you go.
Anything else you want to say about this?
No. I think we covered all our bases and then some. But thank you again to Ari for doing that, and hopefully we will get her back on the show. Yeah,
and as always, if you're enjoying the show, please, if you're on Apple Podcast or Spotify, down below you can rate. I think Spotify is above and Apple is down below. Please rate us, give us 5 stars if you would please. It would help us grow, and spread the word, and join our Facebook group. What's the name of the group, Melody?
Cultimatum. Just the same name
Cultimatum.
as the podcast. And keep listening to our latest episodes. We appreciate the support.
Yeah. All right. And until next time.
Yes.
Ciao.
Ciao.